Hey friends, I'm Claude Willis, but I hope you'll just think of me as your friend Claude. You might already be familiar with me as the co-host of Whamcast, but today I want to welcome you to the first episode of a new Wham Network podcast called The No Show. The idea behind this show is to have no format, no rules, and really no limits whatsoever. It's just going to be two people sitting down to have an interesting, free-form conversation. It's going to explore opinions and experiences that make up who we all are. Sometimes this show will supplement existing Whamcast episodes by going a little more in-depth on certain topics. And sometimes this will be its own animal. An untamed, conversational beast that refuses to be controlled. So there you have it, friends. I'm excited to see where it's all going to go. Right here on The No Show. Today's guest is Jamie Barrows. He's one of my oldest friends. In fact, my oldest friend from school. We've known each other since, I believe it's the fall of 1989. So, 26 years, over a quarter century, the better part of 3 decades, however you want to break it down numerically. It's a pretty long time. And, it's always good to catch up and see where we're at from time to time. We're not as close now as we once were, but at the same time, there aren't very many things we haven't done together over the years or talked about or explored. And when you have a connection with somebody that is, as far-reaching as that and as familiar, the results of any conversation are always interesting. So without further ado, we'll join a conversation that we had already in progress, talking about some of the things that went on during our high school experience.
Talking about a former schoolmate of ours who's gone on to be a professional stage performer. I envy his success at what he is his chosen vocation.
Yeah. What do you mean? Because it is what it is, or because it's like a performance thing or an art?
It's both of those things.
Yeah.
It's something that I could have seen myself doing that he's doing and I'm not.
Okay.
And I'm also envious that he is doing exactly what he wanted to do and is finding success doing it.
Yeah, I mean,
and a livelihood.
Because I didn't really care for his personality, I never really talked to him much, but is that what he had always set out to do or whatever?
Oh, yeah. I mean, he went to a small-time state college and went to their theater program, and he's parlayed that into a career doing theater in New York City and
where?
Traveling shows.
School?
SUNY Portland.
Oh, he did?
Yeah.
Oh. Yeah, that's a weird choice for theater.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how well it's regarded as a theater program in general. They do put on really good shows.
Yeah.
I've gone to see shows since, and they always do a good production. So, but I don't know how much you can walk into somebody's office and say like, "This is my background."
Yeah.
But I think it's an art field. So I think your work speaks for itself.
Right.
If you go in an audition and you're good, I don't know that it matters where you went to school.
I mean, yeah, that's true. I guess, I don't know, I feel like all the good theater schools, so to speak, are, sort of near the city, maybe for that exposure, access to the next step or whatever. Like SUNY Purchase is supposed to be a really good theater school.
Yeah.
And I think that's where Wesley Snipes went. I don't know if that relates or not.
Well,
Wagner is supposed to be a good theater school.
I wouldn't be surprised to hear that. I mean, I'm sure that it opens up things, especially for you to sort of get experience in the field as you're going through your schooling.
Right.
But I mean, in this area, SUNY Portland is pretty much a direct line from New York City and Long Island in terms of its student population.
Yeah, I thought of that. That's true.
So I think in that way, that connection sort of remains.
I I don't want to speak for you here, but I don't know if there are two less qualified people on the planet to be trying to iron out the finer points of which is a good theater school or not.
No,
I'm saying about myself.
I am supremely underqualified to try to give any kind of judgments or opinions on this subject, as a matter of fact.
I don't know. It's funny how often I will do that halfway into a conversation and be like, wait a minute, I'm kind of just talking out of my ass here. Like, I don't have any clue.
I did some high school musical theater, Claude. I don't know if you're familiar with my work.
Yeah. I did non-musical one high school play. So I have even less.
I did 3 total plays, so let's not overstate.
What was, so you did Cinderella, you did the one I was in, and then what was the other one?
The year before I did Hello Dolly.
Oh, you were in that.
Yep, I was a waiter in Hello Dolly. We had a lot of cool, like, little interludes throughout the show where we'd come out and do a little shtick.
Right.
It was actually pretty cool.
Who's in that with you?
Well, a lot of the soccer guys did the waiter
right.
stuff. That was part of the deal.
That's what I meant, like the waiter.
Yeah. The soccer team was brought in to just do this shticky, gimmicky thing where we're going to be the waiters. So we did, like, we set the tables by throwing plates back and forth across the stage, and it looked really cool. And in the middle of a scene, we'd come out and, like, play baseball with the breadsticks.
Right.
But we also did the song Hello Dolly and did some other just kind of funny stuff. And that kind of, because I've always been really interested in that sort of thing, but at the same time, I'm not a very outgoing person. So the idea of auditioning for a show was very stressful.
Yeah.
This was an easy way for me to get into a show where it's like, hey, the soccer guys are just in. That's cool. All right, I'm in too.
Why was that? Because it was particularly physical or something? Or
No, I think it was the gimmick of it. It's like, hey, we need 6 or 8 guys or whatever.
Right.
Like, what if we do the soccer guys? And so I think it was literally just the gimmick of it was funny.
That makes sense.
But to me, it was like, okay, this is really cool. I want to do this.
Yeah.
So the next year, I sanded up and actually auditioned to be in a play. And the play ended up being Cinderella. I ended up being Prince Charming. I don't want to speak too negatively of the experience, but being Prince Charming in Rodgers and Hammerstein's Cinderella is kind of a boring gig.
Yeah. But don't you have to, just to go back to the whole thing about auditioning being stressful or intimidating, I mean, don't you technically have to try out or something to be on the soccer team or any team too? Or?
Yeah, but I mean,
Not really.
The numbers that were going out to play soccer at that time were not such that there was going to be a lot of cuts.
Oh, it's that aspect that makes it hard or whatever.
Well, it's just different.
I know it's a different animal, but
I had played soccer since, team soccer since, way before that.
right. Okay.
So I knew what to expect when I walked to the first day of practice. I knew we were going to run, we were going to pass, and do soccer stuff.
Right.
But, auditioning for, even in high school theater, for some people it's easy, but it was not easy to think that, okay, it's my turn to audition. So you step to the middle of the stage all by yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and you have to sing a number that they just handed to you back there.
That's true.
And you have to sing it, in front of the people who are running the show, the teacher/director of the show.
Right.
And everyone around who's, also auditioning, and people who are going to be the stage managers, and people who are already starting to build sets or do whatever else.
And of course, every one of them has, I don't know about infinitely, but much more experience than you.
Most of those people had done it before.
Yeah.
So here I am walking up here for the first time,
Yeah, there are those, like, social things that make it even more, like, I probably up to that point, in some ways, you're, like, a jock trying out for a play or something.
It might be, although I don't know if that was my reputation. It was weird because I was never, like, a popular guy. I played sports, so that, like, gave me... So I didn't have, like, bad relationships with most of, like, the popular jock-type dudes. But I was also, like, the nerdy, get good grades...
Do you think
kid
popularity,
also.
like, is a requirement for being considered a jock? Does that go hand in hand?
Well, according to the archetype and the cliche, it does.
Yeah.
I mean, but we're not talking about a teen movie here. We're talking about real life.
Well, it's hard to
So
imagine your life as a teen movie because we didn't have, like, the football and, like, the typical shit. Like,
well, yeah, like the jocks and the stoners and the hippies and the cool girls. I mean, that's always what you see in the movies.
and that existed, but it was much smaller, but also much more.
There was a lot more crossover in the Venn diagram of groups of people, I think, when we were growing up.
Yeah, for sure.
But, I mean, I wasn't walking out there on the stage supremely confident in myself, thinking everybody likes me. I mean, I didn't have, I had issues with security, self-confidence, and everything else. So,
Do you think, when you say that, you're saying you think, like the typical quote unquote jock would be full of self confidence or whatever? Or
No.
these would come off that way or something. I don't know.
No, because not, and the thing is, in real life, not even everybody on the team would qualify as like an archetypal jock. Many
Yeah.
of our friends who played sports wouldn't
true.
describe them as jocks either.
That's true.
But we're at a small school, so it's interesting that, and maybe this is why teen movies and shows like Glee and things always bother me so much, because I was in drama and art and foreign language. I was also in the honor society and played sports.
Right.
Like, so you could do all of that stuff. And I didn't get slushies thrown in my face because I did musical theater.
But is that a product of the fact that we came from a class of 48 kids? Or, I mean, obviously you would have had those interests regardless of the size of the school you went to. But.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't know. I mean, I think there's some, when you go to, my own kids go to a much larger school district. What you find is they actually have more opportunity to explore some of those interests.
That's right.
There's a lot more clubs and after-school activities and things to do at larger schools. So,
Right.
But by the same token, when you go to a small school, no matter what sort of archetypal character you fit into, a lot of people play sports.
Yeah.
Even if they are the valedictorian or the stoner or the metal guy.
Right.
There's a lot of crossover. So I don't know if that's a product of our small school district, or if it's just real life as compared to how it's done in the movies and on TV.
Yeah.
So the whole thing with me being confident in doing it, I just wasn't. I mean, it was just very. You feel very vulnerable when you're up there all by yourself with basically no accompaniment singing except for like one piano, and that was
you can't
it.
see anything because of the lights.
The lights are on you, and it just had the potential to be an embarrassing moment.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's so weird. Like, I don't know, human physiology or whatever causes that stuff to be. Because you can sit here outside of it and break it down intellectually, and it's hello R2. It's completely silly when you look at it when you're removed from the situation about why it's such a it causes such a reaction. Your heart starts to beat differently and your breathing changes and whatever else. But of course, when you're in the moment, like there's nothing you can do about it. Like you're swallowed by it. It's
Absolutely.
ridiculous.
It's absolutely true. It's so easy to look back in hindsight. Even just like, a recent experience I had with quitting a job. I was stressed about walking into the boss's office and delivering the news.
Right.
Because there had been some staff issues pretty recently to that point, and I knew that this was going to cause stress for everybody. And like I had to psych myself up for it. I got there early, sat in my car. I was in the break room, like psyching myself up, like I was just about to go out and play the big, state championship game or something. If you want to go back to jock territory.
But you were rehearsing probably like what you were going to say in your mind or what
how they were going to react.
Yeah.
So, and now looking back on it, I'm like, I'm a grown man. All I have to do is say, my services are my product that I sell to you.
Right.
I'm working for you because I'm selling my work to you. I will no longer be selling my work to you. Thank you. It's like, from a logical standpoint, it's that simple. But when you have to do it, I don't know. It's just humanity just gets in the way sometimes.
Yeah, it's like there's I don't know how to really frame it in my mind, but it's like you go to a separate place from the one you're used to existing in for a minute, for temporarily, for as long as that interaction exists. It's almost, I don't know, sometimes I feel like when I'm in those moments, I feel like there's like almost like a veil or something over my eyes, like things look differently, and I don't know, it's just the weirdest thing, like you're so out of control.
It's funny because like people in science fields always try to sort of get across to people how much our perceptions are vulnerable to the environment.
Yeah.
And how we don't always see what we think we see, and we don't always remember it quite right. And that's kind of that happening to you in real time.
Yeah.
And only after can you look back and say, like, it wasn't that bad.
Right.
It's just in the moment, your perceptions are not right. Chemicals in your brain are getting in the way.
And well, to go back to what you said about how during the audition, it might be easy for some people or whatever, but it wasn't for you. Like, you weren't full of confidence. I mean, that's the way it seems like a lot of people are in those work situations too, where there's always that person that's just domineering no matter what, or just unreasonable and boisterous, I guess, no matter what. And when I have to be that way, because inevitably you're called to be that way whether you want to or not, at some point. But I always feel it's so hard. It takes all my energy to be like that. Number one, and then instantly I feel guilt. I feel like, oh man, do I really need to do that? But why? It did never seem. I'm not in these other people's heads, but it seems like that the people who are like that by default would never have that moment of like questioning themselves or whatever.
Yeah, and it's dangerous to think that probably because
Yeah.
they could be just as stressed or worried about it as you. You know, the person who gets up and auditions for the lead role could be just as nervous as you are about it,
Right.
but you're unable to get out of your own way, and so you just assume that they're better, more prepared.
Exactly.
This is so much easier for them than it is for me, and maybe that's sort of a self-defense mechanism. So you're setting yourself up because if you fail, you already have your reasons.
Yeah, that's a good point.
They're better. They're more prepared. And
Right.
I wasn't ready for this, and it's not for me, and I'm not ready for this. So maybe that's just that's your own psyche saying, well, just in case this doesn't work out.
Yeah,
But I don't know that everybody feels that. Like you said, you can't get in everyone's head. They have all these personality tests online, and not just like in the fake online world, but like in real
Right.
science.
Well,
And
that's a good way. Like that's kind of a good. I don't know, a good way to look at it, or a good possible point is that.
it's a possible point.
Yeah.
We haven't gotten there yet.
Well,
Maybe it's potential.
I'm about to frame it in a way that it could solidify into a legitimate point. Basically, everything that these scenarios have in common is the fact that it boils down to some type or some form of competition. I mean, whether you're competing against yourself to perform a certain way, or to rise to a challenge, or like I said, you're competing against somebody who is seen as more prepared, more whatever, they have all the advantages that you don't, or you're competing, I guess, against, I don't know if your boss or whatever the work scenario is a competition, but in a way, I mean, you're sort of like fighting for a certain amount of respect or whatever, a place in a company, so to speak. And I've heard like people that are like, I have a couple of friends who do martial arts and things like that, and it's like similar phenomena that they go through when they fight or whatever. So it's like, I don't know, is it just competition that causes you to, have these weird like mental freak out? I mean, freak out really isn't the best term, but what I mean? Like, to cause that change in perception.
I mean, just on the spur of the moment, I'm trying to conjure up some scenario where it wouldn't be competition based, and I'm unable to come up with one.
Right.
But I guess like by default, if it's a competitive scenario, then that means there's something to lose, even if it's just a game. And chances are, if it's a competitive scenario, there's someone there to see it happen.
Yeah, there's an audience. Yeah.
So if it's just me drawing a picture and it doesn't work out, nobody ever has to see it.
Right.
If something, if the perspective is wrong in my drawing, then I'm not competing against anybody. I'm not going to show that to anybody. So yeah, I'm struggling to find a scenario where some sort of competitive, or at least sort of a public display is what maybe is the cause of it. I mean, it's a psychological barrier worried about being embarrassed or being seen as sort of less prepared or less strong, and that could go all the way back to instincts about like survival and showing yourself to be as strong and as fit and as good as you can possibly be because you have to mate and propagate the species in your genetic line. Who knows? It can go all the way back to go all the way down to our reptilian brain to find the roots of it.
I guess so. I guess it really comes down to competition and being watched or being watched/judged.
The possibility of your failure being witnessed.
Yeah.
And then you not being able to mate during mating season.
Right. Yeah, because if you're not, if you didn't perform Prince Charming flawlessly, then the girl isn't going to want to, sleep with you or whatever. Like, I mean, it all comes down to that, I guess, when you boil it down. Like, biologically.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't have the good job or make a lot of money, same end result. Don't make the team, same end result. You know?
Yeah.
It really is all like traced back to the simplest. I don't know about explanation, but just the simplest root goal or whatever.
And there's some scenarios where I find that it would be less stressful for me. I mean, specifically auditioning and singing in front of people, then, and again, I'm speaking like I'm some professional thespian, and I'm not. I did a couple of plays in high school drama, just to be clear.
But I wonder if it ever changes, even if you are professional. Yeah.
Well, at least at that point, like I didn't, I wasn't doing anything that was analogous to it.
Yeah.
I wasn't in band, I wasn't in chorus.
Right.
I'd never been involved in the drama program.
Right.
Before the play, previous to my audition, which I was on automatically because they decided to do this gimmicky thing with the soccer players.
Right.
So I was never in a position like that, and I did feel underprepared. And I don't know if that's legitimate or not, but I know that there were people who were there who had done it before.
Yeah.
And I hadn't. But even now, I mean, dancing and singing in front of people, like I can't just do that. Like if you say like you're going to be performing a part,
mm-hmm.
you're in a role, I could do it. But to just
you can't generate it from within. Based on nothing.
No.
Yeah. Well, I don't know many people who can, honestly. I mean,
I'm just trying to think of a scenario where I'd be comfortable just like singing in front of people, even if I can sing.
Right.
And I can't think of a scenario where I would be comfortable with that. Feeling vulnerable, like by myself. The audition process would be difficult. But once you're sort of now auditions much more stressful than rehearsal.
Right, of course.
Maybe that's because you're in already.
You're in already, and like this is the space where you're expected to make your mistakes. And
but you're still singing in front of people. You still have to perform effectively. And then like in a band scenario, and I've only been in one band with you long ago, and I got out of the garage band business, and you've continued on over the years. But even like singing in that scenario, you're surrounded by sound and bandmates.
Yeah.
And I never was nervous about singing the songs that I wrote for the band at that time. So that didn't make me nervous at all. So I think it was the security blanket of the sound and noise, and there was something more vulnerable about that audition process.
Yeah, I mean, certainly the fact that a band is more like a team, you're not necessarily the only guy being scrutinized or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
It makes it a little easier, I think. Oh man, I had something great. I don't know if it was great, but I had something concrete that I planned to go to.
I took too long.
But I do wonder, like, how often people, not even necessarily people like that are on like the Hollywood level, but just people that are professionals at things like that, or that have done it countless times. I mean, there still always has to be some amount of nervousness or, second guessing yourself or whatever. I would imagine anyway.
It's a whole different thing too, because people who are doing it professionally have obviously probably dealt with rejection as well.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Like I kind of am batting 1,000. I auditioned for one play, I got the part.
That's a good point.
And then I never really came back to it.
Right.
So much to my chagrin, I wish I had continued on at least a little bit longer. But
you're almost batting more than 1,000 because the one before that you didn't even have to audition.
That's right. I got in as a gimmick. Right. So yeah, I'm batting better than perfect in terms of that. So that's a whole part of the experience that I can't even relate to.
Right.
Like the rejection and failure part of it. And so so I'm worried about it, having never faced it.
Yeah.
So you imagine
worried.
somebody who continues to audition and do this as a career, while at the same time facing rejection.
Right.
You hear these success stories about how people were turned down again and again and again and again.
Yeah.
And they kept at it.
Like 100 or 1,000 no's for every one yes or something.
Right. Yeah. So that's a whole part of the equation that I don't even have that in my in my algorithm.
Right. Yeah, I enjoyed the one that I did, the one play in senior year. But I think similarly to the fact that you never had to really worry about rejection, like I have an issue with, I guess, detaching from my experience. So I did that one play, and that makes me, in my mind, that's what doing a play is.
Mm-hmm.
It's always that type of story, it's that type of role.
Yep.
And like, obviously, if you're an actor, it's 1,000 different roles.
Yeah. I mean, because that play most is sort of most analogous to like sketch comedy show almost.
Yeah.
Like I don't know, like
It was pretty.
Like some of the people who were doing the show that I shared the stage with were like sort of going out of their way to be over the top and try to make the other person break character.
Well, yeah.
I experienced that with two different performers in that play, which is fine. I have no ill will towards that. I think it was kind of funny actually, but it was definitely different because it was sort of, again, this is high school drama.
Yeah.
But doing the production of Cinderella was more, air quotes, professional.
Right. Well, yeah,
That was my experience. I don't mean to downplay the play that we did, that you were in, that I was also in.
Well, it was
like that wasn't professional. This is below me. I'm not trying to be some thespian.
But they're two different animals.
Elitist.
The Cinderella thing, you have to like live up to the story of Cinderella.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, unless unless it's advertised that you're doing a farce version or something
right.
nonsense. But this one that we did was like just it was like a murder mystery play, but it wasn't.
It was most like Clue or something. It was a parody satire.
But it was almost like you said, like a sketch comedy version of a murder mystery. Because I mean, I don't know. I've seen like Clue, the movie, is like that in a lot of ways, but I feel like theirs was comedic, but ours crossed over into zany.
Yeah, I think that's right. I mean, I remember there was a specific scene where I'm questioning. I played a lawyer trying to find out the details of this murder, and I'm questioning people about what's happening. The curtain closes on that scene and reopens to us doing a game show. And me talking in a game show voice. What's your answer?
Right.
So, yeah, that's kind of really off the rails.
Yeah. They had me, like, doing bizarre physical comedy, especially like, with my death scene. I had to, like, flop myself over the back of a chair and, like, just stay fixed with my legs in the air.
I remember that.
I still am. I mean, it was just obviously done for the sake of doing it at the time. And I guess it worked. I'm kind of upset that there was no, at least to my knowledge, there's no footage of it.
Yeah, I don't believe I've ever seen it on video.
Yeah.
I thought it was recorded, but I've never seen the evidence.
I know for a fact it was, and maybe that's something, the teacher or whatever has or something, or had. I mean, who knows?
It'd be on VHS tape.
Yeah. That's the thing, too, is a lot of schools, got to use, like, body mics and stuff. Like, we were you just had to, like, be heard.
Yeah.
And I guarantee a lot of my lines were not audible because I'm very bad at that.
It's interesting, again, to compare and sound like an elitist. And when I did Cinderella, we were professionals. We had stage mics.
Oh, really?
So we were not mic'd ourselves, but there were mics on the stage. And some of that was for dialogue, and some of that was for, the musical numbers.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, maybe they should have just done that by default for
everything.
Every style of play, yeah.
I mean, I think it was because you had to hear us singing over the accompaniment. They had a 5-piece orchestra and a piano or something.
Yeah.
So maybe that was the justification for having the mics up there. I think now, if you go back now, because we're old, if you go back now, I think
15, 16 years ago.
I think they mic everybody now for a lot of what they do in the drama program.
Kids today have it so much easier.
These sons of bitches. They don't know how it was to walk uphill to school.
I literally had to walk uphill both ways. My street is a valley, I guess.
If you average it, you just walked flat, though. Let's take the mean.
Well, it didn't feel very average. With snow up to your knees. Generally, I was able to get a ride. But there were those days. Yeah, I like to point that out whenever I get a chance. It's actually true.
Trudging through the snow uphill both ways to school, wearing nothing but a sleeveless sweater.
I don't think I ever owned that. Oh wait, are you talking about the late '90s when the sweater vest thing over the T-shirt was?
I wasn't even talking. I wasn't making any specific reference, but I did wear the sweater vest with the white T-shirt.
Oh, you had to. Yeah, everybody did. It seemed to make so much sense then.
I think I've done it probably too recently to be acceptable.
Really?
But
yeah, you look back on it and it's like, why? how do these things start?
Awesomeness reasons.
And I remember that was right at the same time where you sort of had to have like the thick gauge. I know isn't the appropriate term, but for lack of a better term, thick gauge corduroy pants.
Oh, I never. No, I
Never got into that.
No, there's far too much chafing going on betwixt my meaty thighs to try corduroy.
Yeah, they were all the rage. Like carpenter jeans and cargo jeans all hit at the same time.
Carpenter jeans were great. When they come back into style, I'm going right to JCPenney.
I want to say like Wrangler or somebody still makes them.
Well, they do, but they're not fashionable.
Yeah, but
the 90s are coming back again, though. They're making
functional. Yeah,
the 90s are making retro chic thing happen. You know, you see these. I've seen overalls in fashion sections of stores. I've seen like chunky boots for women.
Right.
You know, pretty soon I'll be wearing like bright teal striped shirts that are probably too big.
I heard for one of the models I shot last month, or I think it was last month, that like a lot of girls are starting to wear those super tight chokers again.
Yeah.
Which
pretty soon we'll be middle parting our hair.
Yeah, but see the choker thing, like 90s fashion was kind of a hodgepodge of other eras. So like if 90s fashion is coming back, then that means like those cherry-picked elements of like 60s or whatever else made it up are coming back again and diluted even further.
That's right. It's just it's like a 20-year cycle, I think, but like it's like making a copy of a copy. It's not as sharp.
Yeah.
So it's just going to get farther and farther away from really what it was.
Right. Yeah, because I mean, of course I remember the 90s stuff still pretty well. And I could sit here and be like, well, that's not exactly how it was.
Also, like, the 90s isn't just the 90s. I mean, there's different stages of the 90s.
Exactly. Well, yeah. Just like
you're talking about, like, 91. You're talking about, like, MC Hammer pants.
Yeah, exactly.
You know, and
if you're talking... still the late 80s.
If you're talking 94 to 96, you got to start thinking about grunge and flannel.
Right.
If you go beyond that, that's when you get into, like, striped shirts and, like...
Yeah, the sweater vest.
Yeah. So there were some evolutions within the decade.
Right.
Get over it.
Yeah, I think, like, I want to say the flannel, like the grungy flannel, sort of morphed into, like, not really flannel, but a less grungy plaid. Like, you had to have a plaid shirt over a t-shirt.
Yeah, I think that was a whole thing, too. But not grunge, you're right. A little different.
Yeah,
like
still,
tighter plaid.
Yeah, it was smaller squares.
Yeah, smaller. A lot of long sleeve T-shirts with like sleeve graphics. Remember that was a thing. That was a thing for a while.
Yeah.
That sounds like a really strange reference, but it's strange to think that I sometimes you look back at fashion. And we've talked about this before. If you look at like hipster fashion, that's almost evolved from grunge.
Also, oh yeah, you're right. It's like a
you just button it all the way to the top,
cleaned up kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's like not really clean. It's like wealthy grunge.
Wealthy grunge. Grunge
for
chic.
people that have money.
Like, yeah, I'm bearded. I'm also very well manicured.
Yeah, exactly. Well, yeah, you get a lot of that now where it's like, yeah, every dude that has a beard also has like a fucking pressed collared white shirt on and like this tailored vest and this haircut that's like shaved on the sides, but like the top is like this perfectly oiled, like side parted 50s do or something.
Yeah. But the sides aren't shaped up high enough to make a mohawk.
Right.
You don't want that.
It's sort of like a grown out Marine haircut or something.
Yeah, almost, yeah.
Like the Marines were allowed to have like combable hair on top.
Just on top.
Yeah, well, for whatever reason, like
you're right.
When you're in battle, the sides have to go.
And the more old-fashioned your shoes look, the better.
Yeah, I guess look is the key
Just
word.
A flat sole stapled to a leather body.
Yep.
Then you're good. But you don't want it to actually be old though, because that just wouldn't be cool. I feel like.
No,
I don't know. I'm so not a hipster. Like
it's faux old.
I'm starting to feel a little guilty about going after hipster fashion because it's just some people are comfortable like that, and I'm comfortable the way I'm comfortable, and I shouldn't judge them. But it really doesn't look comfortable.
I've gotten called a hipster before, but I've never really like actually embodied it or actually attempted to I guess look up a hipster manual and be like, check, got it. I mean, I grew up poor. I'm still pretty poor in the general sense of the word. So I'm no stranger to thrift stores. And that became like, at some point, thrift stores became trendy. And so that now we have all these like upscale thrift stores.
Yes.
So like, the whole point of a thrift store is negated by the fact that you still have to spend $200 to look good when you come out of there. I mean, obviously you're getting things still for infinitely cheaper than when they are initially released, but you're still not able to necessarily save money by buying them because you're still spending $97 on a cool jacket that it might be worth $500, but
you got a great deal.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You're right. I mean, I definitely have been in sort of those like trendy secondhand stores.
Yeah.
It is kind of a weird thing to feel like you're walking into this chic establishment with used clothes.
Yeah, it's just wait a minute, it's something. Like this is a garage sale, which is it solely exists to get something super cheap and get rid of it, but I still have to bring my credit card.
You can't just get it with a change in the cup holder.
So it goes full circle. So you're better off just going to the store and getting something new.
But then people will tell you, well, you're better off spending $40 on a $90 pair of pants,
yeah, exactly,
than spending $20 on a $20 pair of pants.
Yeah, especially because the $20 pair of pants doesn't have any character.
It doesn't have the character.
It's not unique.
The purposeful wear marks are not in the right place.
Yeah, how bored and privileged are we that we have to artificially distress and age our clothing as a conscious fashion choice?
It's quite a problem to have.
First world problem.
It's quite a world we live in. How privileged are we that we can make comment on people's choice of dress?
How meta do we want to go?
How deep do we want to go down this rabbit hole?
I don't. My brain's already exploding trying to think of the next level. So
I don't know. I don't know what the next level would be.
Tapping out.
Moving on. Should we talk Democratic debate? I can't. I didn't watch it.
You bastard. Because I was a split second away from going, all right.
I mean, just as a jumping off point, I know that I'm pretty damn far to the left. I still feel like you're lefterer than I am.
Yeah, I mean, maybe.
But I think the reason for that is that you have these really idealistic expectations that are just never going to happen.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of sitting over here, kind of being like the boring, logical person, saying, just pick one that's the closest to what you want.
Can't do it.
You're never going to find the exact match. Like, you're just never going to find it.
Well, see, I'm the other side of that. I realize I'm never going to find it, so I go the other way. I'm just not going to try.
I know. And that is infuriating to so many people. Because
why won't you play the game? I have to play the game.
I have a very close relative of mine that I'm sure has probably spoken to you directly about. Don't just not play, because somebody has equally sort of conservative or right-wing views that you do, they're going to pick their guy. They're going to vote for their guy.
Right.
And like, you don't have your guy, but please cancel out that guy's vote.
Right.
Pretty please. Like, that's like kind of the compromise that other lefty people want you to make.
Right.
Want somebody like you to make. It's like, just vote for him, because at least some right-wing crazy's vote is going to be canceled out by yours.
Yeah. Well, that's always the problem with idiots, isn't it? That for some reason, well, I use idiots to mean,
you want to just start that sentence over and edit something?
No. I'm sticking to idiots. Zealots. I hate like categorizing things as right or left or.
Me too.
I'm going to try not to. But the problem with idiots is that they always seem to have no problem mobilizing.
You're absolutely right.
They turn out because they're so, like, for some reason they're not. It's not that I'm necessarily apathetic. It's that, like, I'm content to not have to fucking make sure somebody heard my voice, or
you're not that, like, sort of needy about it. I mean, that's a really sort of.
I don't need to tell somebody else how they should live.
Mm-hmm.
And then on top of that, I don't need to, like, bother somebody in power to make sure that they're telling somebody else how I think they should live.
Mm.
And that's what I think, for lack of a better term, these idiots are obsessed with doing.
Yeah.
And they always turn out in a substantial numbers.
And it does go both ways, right and left. I mean, I know you want us to get away from that spectrum, but I mean, that's what happens. It's people on both sides. I mean, I think that how I would categorize my own thoughts about it is that, like, I agree with most leftist views, but I find that the extremism, I don't think it's an unwarranted word, because you say extremism, people think like terrorism, you know. It just means your belief system. I don't buy into this like extremophile beliefs that you have to. If you're a leftist, that means you have to check all these boxes off.
Yeah.
And people on both sides do that. They tell the other side how to live. I just want like leftist principles to be the way of the world, and then not have to worry about everybody else.
Well,
because that's just what I just want everybody to agree with me,
right?
Without having to work for it.
I guess ultimately that's what everybody wants, but I feel like some people are simply not content to just live and let live. They have to browbeat you.
Yep.
They have to, like, I don't know, they can't sit still unless they're releasing it from within and putting it onto you or something.
Yeah, man, I can't even begin. I mean, the psychological aspects of that are so deep.
Yeah.
I don't even know how to scratch the surface of it. I mean, the need to control everybody else.
That's why I have such a problem with a thing like religion. And I think that's what a thing like religion, that's why it gets to be seen as a problem a lot of the times. Because it's not necessarily the religion itself that's quote-unquote bad. It's that somehow these types of people seem to end up drawn to things like religion and convoluting the perception of it and ruining it for everybody else.
Yes, I think you're right. And the thing that is always frustrating about that to me is that I grew up around religious people, but none of them, first of all, everybody in my family, despite being religious, is a liberal progressive person. So that would seem to be a contradiction.
What?
You know, this isn't possible. But it's true. And so that's why I have a real hard time with religious conversation, because people get so strong about the language that they use.
Right.
And I cannot get on board with it, because my personal experience does not show me that all religious people are trying to control us, and all religious people are trying to make religion the central aspect of our society and our governance and our laws and everything like that, because that's not my personal experience.
Right.
But unfortunately, the people it's too easy to latch on to religion as your reason for thinking that way.
Yeah.
And if you don't believe those things, you call yourself religious, specifically Christian or whatever other religion, and you say like, well, I believe, but I don't believe like those people do, then why do you want to call yourself that?
Yeah.
Like, just say you're spiritual if you want to or whatever, but because there's too much dogma in the religion. In order to not believe that stuff, you have to cherry pick things out.
Exactly.
And then, so if you're saying, like, I don't believe in this and this because that's not good. I just like this and this. Love thy neighbor and don't kill each other. Like, that's what I believe in. Well, if it's okay for you to cherry pick those things out, then doesn't it have to be okay for the other person to cherry pick out slaves are okay, by the way, and if a woman is raped, then she now has to marry her raper?
And or be stoned to death.
Or be stoned to death if she refuses? Like, isn't it? So if you're going to cherry pick out the good things, isn't it then acceptable for someone else to cherry pick out the things that they like?
Right. Well, I would take it even further and say, if all you want to do is cherry pick out things that sort of seem like moral fundamentals, couldn't you say that you don't really need the religion after all? Couldn't you say that you're just a good human being and not necessarily like because religion taught you that you shouldn't kill somebody else? Couldn't you say that most of what the teachings aren't necessarily applicable to your life?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think a lot of us just end up getting caught up in, you know, well, my parents were religious or were this religion or something, and I have to be, and so on and so on and so on.
It's a community. It's part of your daily
Right.
life. It's just part of the routine of how you live.
Yeah. And maybe I grew up kind of removed from all that.
I mean, I don't want to paint a picture that I was around extremely religious people. You know,
Right.
our church attendance was not perfect over the years. You know, we'd go for stretches where we would go a few Sundays in a row, then we wouldn't go, and then we'd go for a while, then we wouldn't go at all for a year, and then we'd go back. And And so it wasn't sort of this consistent thing, but there's always belief there. There's always belief in the background.
Mm-hmm.
And then along with that belief, the first time I said, hey, I'm an atheist.
Right.
The first thing I heard was, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I feel sorry for you. And it's like, no, you don't understand. It was. And I say, and I know the person who said this will probably hear this eventually, and I hope that they're not insulted, and I don't want them to think that I think negatively about them.
Sure.
But I just wanted it to be clear. I wanted to make it clear that my belief system is not just like this hopeless abyss.
Right.
Like, it's kind of like this cosmic perspective where we're all part of the universe, and we're just lucky enough that some of these energies came together to make us for a while. So it's cool. I get to be a human for a little bit, and then the energies go do something else.
Right, exactly.
Like, it's not this like a hopeless thing that is depressing. It's just kind of like, hey, I'm lucky. I get to actually think and look at the universe and try to figure things out for a little while.
Right.
Probably won't be able to figure it all out, but it doesn't mean that's part of...
But at the same time, you recognize that's what it is.
Yeah.
It's not really anything other than that.
Yeah. So it's not depressing, and it's not hard to sort of pass that along. I mean, my kids I'm not having these conversations with them at this point. But I don't see it as being a hard discussion to talk about it in those terms.
Right.
Instead of saying, well, you just died and there's nothing and it's black. Well, that's not the experience, because if it's nothing and it's black, that means you're conscious to think, this is nothing and it's all black and it's nothing.
Yeah.
But that's not what's going to happen.
Yeah, I think a lot of people can't wrap their mind around the fact that, like, you're not wrapping your mind around anything. Like, there's no mind to wrap. Like,
Right. Yeah.
You can't. The way I always say it to people when they ask me, well, what happens then when you die? It's like, well, you remember being asleep last night,
Yeah.
And sometimes it's no.
You ever wake up without remembering having dreamed?
Right.
Or dreamt?
It's just that.
It's just that without the waking up part.
Exactly.
It's not an experience. It's not like, oh God, I'm dead and there's nothing. You're not conscious. There's nothing there to have that.
That's like your self-preservation going into overload or something to flood your mind with fear and can run away from that idea.
Yeah. So I think that's kind of that's why a lot of people, I think, hang on to religion, because it's the explanation for
and it's like
how we continue on.
Security blanket or something.
It's like, but it's just not the right word to use. So personified, like everything we imagine is so human about it.
Right.
And this is this vast cosmic existence that's beyond our wildest imaginations in terms of size and scope and structure and existence. I mean, even the physical universe that we can look out and see just expands beyond the mind's ability to comprehend it.
Right.
But yet, we go to heaven as a human person.
Yeah.
And we hang out with our other human people friends.
Yep.
And that's how it's imagined.
All there
it's
are.
like, if there is some other form of existence, like if our energies get sucked back into the universe when we die and become part of the cosmic existence,
right?
Why are we a human body, hanging out with our human friend? Like it would be so beyond that. I hope if there's some sort of afterlife that I get to see the edges of the universe, and I get to go through a black hole like a slide for fun, and I get to, I don't expect that to be the case, but even religion's attempt at making it okay makes everything so small and human.
Yeah,
that's more depressing to me than the existence of just being a part of the universe. Is like, hey, you die, and now you go to this other human type place.
Well, I think it's part of the human condition, I guess, to have a certain amount of arrogance about it, or self-aggrandizement. I think it also stems from the fact that just because we are, the most advanced being on this planet, or that we know of, it's hard to step out of that or conceptualize stepping out of that and saying, like, we're actually really a speck.
This is like inadequacy.
Yeah.
Like
wait, what? No, I'm a human. I have this brain that's
harness the power of the atom, but we still die.
Yeah.
And we can gain wealth and money and fame and influence, but we still die. And I think, maybe it is just an ego thing.
Yeah, I mean that's why I think I don't know if I need to get into, or maybe at least this right now, get into the reasons that I became an atheist, or like every little facet of it. But I think that's why it's important to step back from any one religion and sort of examine and find out more about all of them or all belief systems, because I think that's an important part of it that something like Buddhism gets right, where it teaches you to remove yourself from your ego and realize that like you are not your ego, you are not this body, you are so much more and yet so much less at the same time.
Yeah.
So I mean, I don't know. I think a lot of people just have no desire really to explore that stuff.
Well, this might take us in a whole other direction, but the way you say
Let's
that
go.
people have no desire for that. Some people are so content to not wonder about it,
Yeah,
like to just not.
and I'm just not wired that way, so I can't understand their
Yeah.
understanding,
So I guess you're right about that. Like I have no desire to be like them. They have no desire to be like me. That's
Right.
fine. People have no desire for that, but I mean, I think a big part of that goes back to like just the fear of it.
Yeah.
Like I'll post things like on my social media. I'll post things about we're just a speck on a speck, and Earth is this big, and look how big our sun is. But then a big
Right.
star is this big, and then compared to it all, we're like literally nothing.
Yeah.
We're so insignificant that it's like it doesn't even count. The universe does not notice us.
Exactly.
It doesn't. No matter what we do, the universe does not notice us. So people are like, "Oh, it's so depressing. We're like nothing." But I'm like, "No, it's great because humanity does so many terrible things.
Exactly.
It's good to know that in like the grand scheme of things, like it's all right because
Right.
the universe is gonna keep on turning.
Yeah.
It's like you always see these things about like we got to take care of the earth because we're really hurting the earth.
Right.
It's like really the earth's gonna be fine. We're just hurting ourselves.
We're hurting ourselves because we're hurting our ability to exist on here.
Right.
That's what it is.
There's a funny cartoon I saw around those lines. There's some guy trying to apologize to sort of Mother Nature for everything that we've done. And she gives him a hug, and in his ear, Mother Nature whispers, "It's okay. You've only fucked yourself."
Yeah.
And his eyes go wide.
That's true.
But I mean, it's too easy for religious zealotry to be taken to these violent extremes.
Yeah.
Like I know, like well, not everybody does it. Like most religious people are fine with it, but
Are they? Yeah. Maybe.
they're not fine with it. Did I say fine with it?
Oh yeah.
Did I say that?
No, I know
Most
what you
religious
meant,
people
but-
are not okay with it. They're not okay with like the violent extremes of what happens.
Well, what
but
I
it's
meant,
just
I meant like.
it's so easy to turn the dogma into that.
Yeah.
That's why I don't want it around at all.
That's
like,
what I'm saying. Yeah.
I'm
exactly.
sorry if it hurts you, Mr. or Mrs. non-extreme religious person.
Right.
Like it sucks for you that Christianity can no longer be a thing. But unfortunately, the assholes over here ruined it for everybody.
Exactly.
Like, and you know what? Since you're a good person, you're gonna be fine.
Well, there are a litany of examples throughout human history of us collectively as a species first, but as a nation, as a planet, as whatever, detaching from things and moving beyond things that are no longer useful, or or we figured out, okay, well maybe we made a mistake by doing that. Evolving basically.
Mm-hmm.
And there will inevitably, there's nothing that can be done to stop it, but there will inevitably come a time when that happens to religion as a whole. Whether or not we see it in our lifetime is a whole other can of worms, and probably not. But I think, probably more than ever, we're seeing. I don't want to say like total acceptance of that, but certainly realization of it on a scale that hasn't happened before.
I would settle for sort of it being more taboo. I'd settle for just like secularism being the vast belief system, the vast majority sort of people being mostly secular.
Right.
We have like our society and our knowledge of things has outmoded things, and sort of I'm a fan of science, I guess. I like to say I'm a science-ist. I'm not a scientist. I can't say that I'm a scientist. I've never been paid. I'm not educated in that field.
That's clever.
But I'm a science-ist.
Right.
I lean on that to be like the way of understanding things, which is what it is. I mean, religion evolved as a way of understanding things that we couldn't understand. But
Right.
like one by one, we've ticked off things. We now understand this. We now understand that. We now understand the next thing.
Right.
And people always sort of fight against that. People who don't believe in evolution. Well, why are there still monkeys? Because evolution doesn't work in a straight line. It's not how it works. It's not like a monkey becomes a bent over man becomes a man. It's about like one species of monkeys, slowly starts losing their hair over 1 million years. It's not just this all of a sudden a human is born from a monkey and that's the first man.
Right.
So people resist these ideas, and the part of science is like, yeah, it doesn't have it all figured out, doesn't claim to, but it's working on things. Like religion says, this is the rule. This is how it is. We got it.
Right.
It's done.
Yeah, it's figured out.
And science, is for the most part willing to say, we think this is it.
Right.
But we're going to keep testing it.
But they also say that they don't know if they don't know.
Yeah.
And that's the key.
Yeah. And you can point to all kinds of sort of studies that have been found untrue, or scientists who are in the pocket of some sort of corporate entity. I understand that.
Sure.
But I think there's when you're talking about the basic fundamentals of science, again, evolution and aging, how old is the universe and all these kinds of things. It all flies directly. It flies directly in the face of religious dogma.
Right.
And even then, if you follow, I think it's something like the sons and daughters of Adam and Eve went into the world to find husbands and wives.
Right.
So where did those husbands and wives come from?
Exactly.
So it's just the dogma is just too much. And like I said, if you're going to cherry pick certain things, then maybe that's just like the litmus test that you're a good person. So it turns out you actually don't need it at all.
Right. That's what I'm saying. Is we all know what's right and wrong, and why can't we get to a point where we say universally this is clearly how you should operate to be, a functional member of our civilization? And civilization is not powered by Christian morals or, Muslim morals or, Jewish morals, whatever it is. They're just the morals or the building blocks or whatever you want to call them, the rules of being in a civilization on this planet. That's just it. And that's
most effectively maximizes our potential and our ability to make progress.
Yeah, it's all about moving forward in the most beneficial way. That's not focused on punishment and consequences and suffering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And at the same time, again, I'll bring it back a little bit to talk about extremist views. It's unfortunate. Well, it goes back to what I said. It's unfortunate that the extremists kind of ruin it for everybody. But they do, and so that's basically how I see it. Now, to say somebody like Lawrence Krauss, who's a noted atheist and scientist, has said it's literally says and believes that it's child abuse to raise a child in a religious setting.
Right. Well, there's extremists on both ends, and they're equally terrible.
So there are extremist sort of secularist views as well.
Yeah.
But then I just fall back on where the science points me, and the science points me that most evidence does not sit with religious dogma.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if it was you I was speaking about this before too or not, but I tell you I was watching this show, like a trading places kind of show or whatever, like a wife swap show.
Sounds familiar.
Where it was an atheist and a Christian.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, so it's along those similar lines. They showed the atheist family before they made the switch, a little backstory vignette on their home life, their everyday thing, and they would sit down at the breakfast table with their daughter, and I don't know. It was obviously edited out of context, but what I remember hearing was, and remember, there is no God. And it's it was very clear that they were being very heavy-handed about enforcing atheism, just to the same degree as their counterparts on the Christian side are always, we always think of that. I say we, people who criticize religion, I guess, always have this caricature of the Christian family who is just obsessed with Christianity and
the Flanders from The Simpsons.
Yeah, and to see the atheist side of it, that was my first experience even realizing that could exist on the atheist side. And to me, that's just as revolting as the Christian version of it.
Yeah.
It would ultimately, what's the point of being an atheist if you're going to be just as heavy-handed to me, the whole point is encourage your child to find their own conclusions.
Yeah.
You know.
Just to encourage critical thinking and just the
Exactly.
seeking out of where the evidence points them, instead of saying there is no God.
Yeah.
Say like,
don't even explore Christianity or learn about it.
no, I mean they should learn about it, but
Exactly.
they should also be willing to or able to sort of see where that takes them. I mean, it just it's like talking about sort of religious holidays with my own children and saying like, well, what is Christmas? What is Christmas really?
Right.
The fact is that Christmas is like an amalgamation of a lot of so-called pagan holidays.
Exactly.
That a lot of different sort of semi-quasi-religious traditions. Some of it was based in folklore or not quite religious beliefs from these different groups. And the Romans Romans? Yeah, Romans.
I think so.
We'll say Christian tradition says. I mean, so you could say that they kind of amalgamated all these things into like their Christian holiday.
Right.
Even though a lot of the traditions within the Christian Christmas holiday have been like borrowed from other things, the Christmas tree itself, the idea of a Santa Claus, things like that. So having the discussion with my kids of what is Christmas, it's like, well, it's a religion. It's a holiday that's been celebrated by a lot of different religious groups, and one of them is Christianity, and they happen to be the ones that sort of influenced its name and things like that.
They won.
So they won. Well, I mean, basically that's how it goes, but I don't try to put it in those terms.
Right.
Because I want the answer to be real without it being like vitriolic.
Yeah, or to
saying like those damn dirty Romans.
Right.
They stole it from the pagans.
Yeah, a lot of people got killed and had their beliefs absorbed or destroyed. Or
yeah. I mean, I could say that. I guess.
But yeah, I mean, who wants to frame it in such a horrible, horrific way for their kids?
And I also, like a lot of atheist people, at least like in online communities, and that's not the real world, I guess, but, they like struggle to come to terms with celebrating holidays. And it's like, I don't at all, because so many of the traditions within the holidays come from, sort of non-dogmatic or just like sort of traditions, true traditions, like societal traditions more than like religious beliefs.
Yeah.
A lot of what goes on at Easter is directly from like pagan holidays in terms of the eggs and things like that. It has nothing to do with really Christianity.
Right.
So I have no trouble celebrating these holidays with my kids, in a non-religious, non-Christian way, even though we do all the same traditions that a Christian would. I don't see the conflict there. So
see, that's the thing is with major holidays like that. Is that
they're also capitalist too? So
well, yeah, that's it. They're religious / Christian in name only. Maybe Easter a little more than name only, just because I feel like the Jesus-ness of it, so to speak, are talked about more. I mean, obviously, Christmas is about the birth of Jesus or whatever, but it's pretty much left at that these days. It's not. They don't really get into it as much, but they're basically all made up of two universal components, whether you're religious or not. One is family time, family rituals, family togetherness,
dinners, and yes, that togetherness is a good way to sum it up.
Which is, of course, applicable to every being, regardless of religious persuasion. And the other part is naked. Commercialism and capitalism, which is also unfortunately universally applicable. And I fail to see how anybody who isn't, Christian or whatever should. Unless you're anybody who isn't Christian that also is non-religious should feel bad about partaking. I mean, if you are strictly a religion that forbids holidays or whatever, or has a conflicting holiday, then that's your own thing, and that's a different story. But for us, I feel nothing. I feel no guilt or weirdness about it either.
Yeah, I guess what I'm getting at by bringing it up is that sort of like the contention that comes from that side of the aisle.
Yeah.
Where they say like, Christians trying to tell us how to live and say Merry Christmas, and I want to say Happy Holidays and this and that, but they're on the other side saying, well, you're celebrating this Christian holiday. How dare you? You're just falling into the dogma like all the other sheeple. Right. So that's just sort of an example of it coming from the other side.
Yeah, I mean,
But I think it comes from a very small minority. And
well,
again,
yeah,
when you're online,
yeah.
that you see a lot of that.
Not
So,
only that, but that minority once again is the group that always shows up and has to be heard and
mhm.
needs the goddamn attention and listen to me, I'm over here.
Well, there's a joke about how you don't have to ask a person if they're vegan, atheist, or a CrossFitter
Exactly.
because they'll tell you in the first 5 minutes.
Yeah, exactly.
It's funny. It's a funny joke, but like most people who don't know me would never know that I'm an atheist or whatever.
Right.
I don't wear it as a badge of honor. It's just I think I treat it as a more literal version of what it is. It's just I'm non-religious.
Well, that's
Like
part of that.
atheism is not my identity. It's
Yeah.
just I'm non-religious. It's just I don't believe in that stuff, and that's just the way it is.
Part of the reason that joke works is because not necessarily CrossFit, but for things like veganism or atheism or non-traditional quote unquote beliefs or activities, at some point you have to declare that that's what you are. Like, if you're at a family dinner and they're serving steak or whatever, and you don't eat that, and you grew up maybe eating it, at some point you have to say, well, look, I'm this now.
I mean, I guess that is something that has to come out.
Right.
Like
Same with atheism. You have to break away and declare yourself at some point.
I don't think that's as much. I mean, if everybody bows their head to pray before Thanksgiving dinner, I'll stand there silently and bow my head out of respect for the people who are doing it.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, it doesn't mean anything to me.
But I know what I'm saying. At some point, you have to
why don't you come to church anymore?
Yeah, your family's gonna find out. You have to mention it,
Yeah.
and then of course it becomes this thing about, well, you talked about it, or it's this issue. Well, it's an issue because you're making it an issue.
Yeah.
Because you can't accept that somebody's doing something different.
I guess some people do sort of claim it as a badge of their identity, and I
Absolutely.
shouldn't. And I mean, it is. Some of my online handles include the word atheism or atheist in them, so maybe I'm guilty of that too. But people sort of I am the atheist writer, or I am the happy atheist, or whatever their personality is, and it's all they are.
Yeah, that's true.
And so that comes with a certain kind of dogma too. Like, you have to buy into these certain. Again, atheism to me is just like, that's what I believe, and that's what I wish other people would believe, but I can't make them, and I just get through my day just fine.
Right.
And I mean, we're having this big conversation about it though, so it maybe contradicts everything I'm saying right now
Yeah,
about it just being a part of how I live. But I don't walk around in my daily life even contemplating it.
Right.
Like, it's not. I never think about this.
Well, I think some people maybe don't have other talents.
Or interests. Hobbies.
So maybe what they're good at is being an atheist. And it becomes like this priority, this encompassing, component to their identity.
Yeah, I mean, and I shouldn't get on people too hard for that because people do it all the time. If you're in really good shape, you start posting pictures of yourself all ripped up, and then before you know it, you're giving fitness advice, nutrition advice.
Yeah.
And if you're an atheist and it's something you're really into, then there's that. And if you're really into Star Wars, then you're joining the Star Wars forum and you're typing about Star Wars all the time.
Right.
So, I mean, I guess everybody has. I mean, maybe I shouldn't discount that as a hobby.
Yeah, but it's a really weird hobby. Anything that I don't know.
It gets really hard when you get meta about things like that.
Well, a hobby to me
it's like, how can you have a conversation about anything if it's so easy to just be like, well, some people.
Right. Yeah.
Well, you're right. I guess I can't say anything because some people
to end them all.
Yeah, but that ends any conversation.
I feel like a hobby is something a little more external than. I mean, it's a little bizarre to me anyway when you start to use, your own identity or your own personality, your own being as your hobby. And obviously it happens, or else we wouldn't be talking about it.
Yeah.
And it happens, you could argue that not only, that's sort of what explains the Kardashians on some level. Not only is that their hobby, that's their income, that's that's every facet of their being is their being.
That's a whole mystery.
So yeah, I mean, people have turned it into industries or whatever, but to me, it's a little bizarre. It's a little off-putting in a way, I guess, because it's almost like somebody like that isn't quite human in a way that like they can really relate to or connect with people that easily.
It's like it goes back to sort of the left-right argument where my thing is like I hate the dichotomy, like the culture war, again, air quotes, I'm using air quotes, culture war, because like in day-to-day life, I'm not gonna like, if I'm holding the door open for somebody, I'm gonna be like, wait a minute, you vote Republican or Democrat?
Yeah,
Before I hold this door open for you, you know what I mean?
Right.
Or hey, before I help you with this flat tire, what's your religious stance?
Exactly.
You know, like I don't go through my life.
And I don't think the zealots do either, but they'd have you believe they do.
Well, right. Well, that's what I'm saying. Like the culture war thing. You listen to Bill O'Reilly. There's like a war on Christians.
Right.
There's a culture war in general.
Yeah.
Like there's literally people like out to get each other. Like I hope that that's not the case.
Right.
I mean, there's weird people all over and bad people or whatever. But in like general life, we're all just trying to make it.
Yeah.
You know, and I don't care about whatever. Don't try to make me do what you're doing.
Yeah.
And don't try to make laws based on that. And then I'm pretty good.
Exactly.
I'm pretty good
after
at
that. It's one thing to talk about it or to say, oh, hey, this is what I'm up to. But once you try to cross over into, forcing other people to do it too, or, being stiff, so rigid and uncompromising about that being the only acceptable way to think about anything, then it gets not only weird, but it gets dangerous in a way.
Mm-hmm.
It's pretty scary.
Again, I mean, it goes like, I don't want you to try to run my life with your beliefs.
Right.
And I wish that was the end of it, but it's like I said twice already. It's too bad that the people do take it too far.
Yeah.
Because it ruins it for you who isn't trying to decide how I live my life. But those 5 crazy people per 10,000 or whatever the ratio is, who are, is ruining it for you.
Right.
So that's why if I could decree it, I'd say no more religion. It's settled.
Why do we know about those people?
Because they're louder for one.
Right.
But I think they're in some cases they're also a physical danger.
Yeah.
As weird as it is, because like violent tendencies fly in the face of most religious teachings, I think, even though there's contradictions all through the holy books and the holy texts left and right. But I think most religious people would say, like, don't hurt thy neighbor,
Right.
But the extremists somehow find a way to make it okay in the name of God.
Right. Which is
righteous act.
Yeah.
So,
sure.
And it's unfortunate, but unfortunately, the most recent mass shooter at the community college was asking people their religious beliefs, and he was a non-believer.
Right.
So there's like an extremist atheist person,
Right.
But there's true atheism should not have any dogma attached to it.
Right. It's
like there's no atheist manual, or there shouldn't be. I mean, you could probably look one up, and somebody's written an atheist manual.
Yeah.
Believe me, it's nonsense. There shouldn't be anyone saying you kill in the name of atheism, because there shouldn't be a rule for a non-thing.
Right.
Atheism is a word to describe a non-thing. It's a non-religion.
It's a lack of religion or a belief.
So anybody who kills in the name of atheism is killing in the name of nothing. Exactly. Like that's what it is. So
I'm literally killing for nothing.
It's so it's linguistically so challenging to sort of weave your way through it all. And again, I almost feel like I'm contradicting myself, because I'm saying on one side of my mouth, atheism is just a state of non-belief, and that's it.
Yeah.
Now the other side of my mouth, I'm saying, man, I wish everybody would stop believing in these other things. I just feel myself contradicting my own thoughts and points I'm trying to make as I blather on endlessly.
I think one of our hugest and most key downfalls / contradictions as a species or a race is the fact that violence, period, has to be abolished, banned, forbidden, forever. But how do you enforce that?
Yeah.
you have to be violent.
Yeah, yeah.
Or, well, to some version of violence. There's a great Star Trek: The Next Generation episode that I always think of when I get into these kind of issues, where they land on a planet that sort of, basically is like that. I think it's a little more extreme. You can't. Not only can you not be violent, or I think use bad language or any of the things that are considered, basically a mother would forbid her kids to do.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm saying is you do any of these things, you break any of these rules, and you're killed. You're just removed from existence.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not necessarily a gruesomely violent way that they go about it, but they will just show up and inject you with something, and then you're done. But it goes beyond like violence or swearing or whatever that causes this. It's literally anything
Mm-hmm.
that they consider to be out of line. I think the reason for it in this episode was somebody had they were playing catch or frisbee or something, and they accidentally chasing the ball or whatever, crossed over a fence into some flowers and accidentally stepped on the flowers, so he had to die. So
Right,
obviously
yeah.
they take it far, but I mean, it's almost you'd almost have to have a society like that in order to seriously enforce something like banning violence.
Boy, yeah, I mean, you're right. I mean, there's no way to. I mean, you're going into Minority Report territory. We have to
Right.
precognitively stop. But see, the thing that always bothered me about that movie, I don't want to jump into movies here, but somebody's gonna kill their wife today. They don't even know they're gonna do it,
Right.
but circumstances are gonna work out so that they're gonna kill their wife at the end of the day. So the cops come in, they put the guy in jail
Right.
as if he committed the murder, or they freeze
Yeah.
him or put him in whatever it is.
Beforehand.
But to me, it always seemed like, okay, if you know the crime's gonna happen, stop that crime and then
Yeah, exactly.
just
Right.
throw him in the cell for the day and then let him out.
Exactly.
So, but in the real world, you can't do that. You can prevent as much as possible, but you can only react after something actually happens.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, people commit crime. I mean, if you go into the mass shooter territory, so many of these people end up killing themselves.
Yeah.
So there's literally nothing you can do
Yep.
to dissuade them from doing it because they are lost already. They have nothing to lose.
Yep.
I mean, unless you make suicide booths legal, like in Futurama,
Right.
you can literally just walk in the booth the moment you feel the urge, and not even get to the point where you got to take it out on people. But the thing is, these people are planning these shootings for weeks or whatever.
They want to
So,
go out in the most
how do you
impactful
stop
way.
people from wanting to go out that way? That's such a deeper issue than just saying you can't do it.
Yeah, you almost
Because-
have to have a weird. It wouldn't exist yet, but something that I don't even know, something that is just in the air, like a grid or something that can just grab you or something the minute you.
You literally have to control the fabric of space time
Exactly.
to just kind of
turn everything
envelop
into
you
or
for a
something.
moment until you
Yeah.
get over whatever it is that's going to make you do this right now.
All right.
So yeah, banning violence. This is
It's the best idea ever and the least possible.
it's the best idea and the least doable idea anybody's ever had. I decree no more violence.
Yep.
Good luck with that. I mean, this is towing really close to the gun control talk.
Right.
If you want to start talking about the methods by which people commit violence.
I'm all for it. I'm ready.
Guns are the number one sort of quickest way to commit the
Yeah.
worst violence,
Yeah.
And so there's numbers that say they banned guns here, and then they had so many knife attacks. But they look at the percentage of people that survive a knife attack or
Yeah.
a lead pipe attack, and it's there was a comedian named Jim Jeffries. He's from Australia, and his best line, he did a whole bit about gun control, and his line was, "There's only one reason for you to want a gun. There's only one really legitimate argument, and that is, fuck off. I like guns."
Guns, exactly.
That's it. Because he goes through a whole thing. He's like, well, it's for safety. Well, do you have your hand on your holster all day long?
Right.
As soon as somebody causes trouble, you're going to be ready to pull your gun out at a moment's notice. Sitting watching TV, somebody bursts through the front door, you're going to pull your gun out.
Yep.
He told a story about how he was held at gunpoint when guys did a home invasion on him.
Yep.
And you don't have time for shit.
Yep, exactly.
Before you know it, you got a gun in your face, you're on the floor, that's it.
Yep.
And then he talks about, and then people die because their guns are out. So you don't want to have your gun just out on you all the time because then accidents happen.
Yep.
Then he says, then people say, I'm a responsible gun owner. I keep my gun in a safe. So then that totally dismisses the idea that it's there for defense.
Exactly.
Somebody comes busting in your house, you tell them, hang on a second, fella, while you go undo your safe. Or open up your safe. Hang on, you came to the wrong place, mister.
Read the
Just
rules.
hang on, is it 23 to the left or 23 to the right? This is all part of a bit by Jim Jeffries, but it's so true to me.
Absolutely.
Like, and I'm conflicted because like I know like a lot of people who hunt and own guns. Like, I have no desire to take someone's gun away, but
No.
you don't need to.
But don't.
You don't need to own a sniper rifle
Right.
in your closet. You don't need to have an AK-47, AR-15. You know, you don't need to have it. Well, it's our Second Amendment rights. Well, are you a member of a well-regulated militia?
Right.
You know, are you ready to be? Do you have like a hotline? You're going to be called into the front ranks to march on Washington if they do something you don't like.
Exactly.
Then, by the way, they have drones and tanks.
Yeah. You haven't been able to do anything about whatever they decide they want to do for arguably 100 years.
Yeah. I mean, it was great when it was muskets, and we could draw our muskets against the government soldiers' muskets, and it was a fair fight. But we draw our coolest weapons, and they've got, you know, they've got fighter jets. And again, they've got drones and carpet bombs, and it's like if the United States government really went to war against its citizenry,
there's nothing.
It is so well equipped.
It is the most absurdly absurdly out of control armed force history has ever conceived of.
Mm-hmm. And we're gonna fight them with the guns in our closet.
Yeah. Oh, look, we could shoot a lot of bullets per minute or whatever.
Like, I'm sorry if that's like depressing that there's nothing you can do against your own government. Luckily, we do have a democracy where you can vote for as much as that may be effective or ineffective. For the most part, we live comfortably.
Right. But the idea of needing to do that, to me, it's not a justification. Like, it's the stupidest and biggest what if ever thought of.
Yeah. And there was another thing I saw where they talked about how, like, well, people will still get their guns. It's like, yeah, but a $300 gun suddenly costs $3,000 on the black market. You really think it's so easy just to get a gun from the black market?
Yeah.
It's like, you got to have money.
Right.
Real money.
What it strikes me, or what has always occurred to me, and I tend to take things not necessarily always to their extreme conclusion or whatever, but perhaps this follows that path. To me, it's extremely absurd that as a race or species, whatever, I guess as this country probably, because I can't necessarily speak on this for the world, but it's ridiculous to me that two of the least regulated things we have in our society are the ability to create life and the ability to end it.
Mm-hmm.
It makes no sense to me whatsoever.
We're totally unqualified for both of those things.
Exactly. And yet, I mean, and they're also like the most awesome responsibility you can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
But they're also the two easiest things that you can pretty much do in the country.
Yeah. Like, life in itself is like an evolutionary miracle.
Yep.
I hate to use the word miracle, given our context of our conversation, but I think my intention is clear. And then, but we just end it willy-nilly.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, even like, and this is going to make me sound like a crazy left-wing nuthead, but like, even like when we killed Osama bin Laden, and people were like jumping up and down and so happy. It's like, I wasn't happy about that.
Yeah, right, yeah.
It's like, you know, he did terrible things, and I wish that he didn't exist, or that he was just somehow was not able to do what he was doing.
Mm-hmm.
But like, to celebrate over a death is just never cool. Just like, I can't get behind that. Like, and I understand like the implications of Osama bin Laden and the things that he did and all that. But it's just like, and also I think it was a little bit like false to be so happy about the death of one guy.
Mm-hmm.
When it's like there's 100 other guys out there doing terrible things, and it's like,
yeah, that's
like it you know, it's just kind of this like reason to be excited about something that's just a drop in the bucket.
Right.
But again, I've lost another thought. This is probably my third or fourth during the conversation that I've lost. But going back a little bit, we were on we're just on gun control in general.
To create life or end life.
I was back on gun control. I was back before that. So the other thing is, like, I've yet to see any truck labeled like gun confiscation unit.
Right. Exactly.
It's like literally like taking the guns out of your hands.
Yeah.
People say like, oh no, it's going to happen. It's totally what they're trying to do.
That's not even.
But
close.
like that's not. It's so.
It would never happen. It couldn't feasibly happen.
No, and you think they're literally going to come into your house like best case scenario for me is that they would say like no more certain guns.
Right.
And if you already have them, you're probably just going to be grandfathered in.
Exactly.
They're not going to march around and try to track down every father's AK-47 from Vietnam and
Right.
whatever else is out there. Like, so I just think that, but obsession with guns in general is such like a uniquely American thing.
It is.
It totally is. Like we have like more guns and more gun fatalities in this country than like any other developed nation.
Yeah.
By like a long way. And people say like we're the only country where mass shootings happen. Yes, you can get on the internet and find mass shootings elsewhere.
Right.
But like the number of them is so astounding compared to where it happens anywhere else. Even though overall crime is going down.
Yeah, well,
Like-
I mean, we're up to, like, I think it's 267, 266 for this year alone
Yeah.
so far.
Yeah. And that just doesn't happen anywhere else. Like, how do you just... It's just a fact that you can't get around.
I mean, that one that happened at the community college in Oregon was the first one that I can recall. I mean, this is ridiculous that we're like, remember this shooting and that shooting?
Yeah.
But, like, I'm sure there's been more, but at least in a couple months anyway, the first one of note. And before the ink was even dry on the newspapers reporting that shooting, 2 more had happened.
Mm-hmm.
There was another one in Arizona and another
Yeah,
one
that's right,
somewhere
that's
else
right.
that I can't even remember because I don't have any space in my brain to store all the information about them all.
Yeah, yeah.
And yet, there could literally be 5 a day in this country, and you will still have a segment of the population saying that the answer is more guns.
Yeah, I know.
I mean, how bad does it have to get?
Like the Wild West, people want it to be like,
Yeah.
which even that is like a myth. Like it wasn't quite like people
Right.
imagine it. But like everybody just a free for all. You
Yeah.
know, like people say like, well, if everybody carries a gun, then people won't mess with it. You won't mess with everybody else because you know that they can respond in kind.
Right.
You know, it goes back to like the Conan stories from Robert E. Howard. Like Conan preferred the barbarian culture because if you mess with somebody, they can just cut your throat.
Yeah.
There's none of this legal system nonsense to deal with,
Right.
which he always found confusing when he would go into civilized countries or nations in the Conan universe. I get into a whole thing about how Conan is misrepresented in the movies, but we'll stay away from that for now. But yeah, just like, okay, everybody's packing now. Congratulations. Like
Yeah, is that what you want?
well, so now you're just gonna be satisfied with that. Like, well, now we can just all kill each other. So
Right.
that's cool, I guess. Like,
So-
I don't know. It's such an idealistic standpoint. I'll never see the things I want to see in my lifetime. So
But doesn't the more guns arm everybody argument, isn't it self-nullifying? Because it's the exact same state that you'd have if everybody had no guns.
yeah,
Everybody would have their fists and be equally armed.
yeah, it is kind of, and it's funny too when people say like, well, bad guys still get guns, so I guess we can't get rid of them. So why do we even have laws? Because
Yeah,
bad guys
yeah.
are still going to break laws.
Exactly.
So why even bother? Somebody I know posted something on Facebook. It actually was good. It's like, why even bother having laws? Because bad guys are still going to commit crimes, and yet we have laws.
Exactly.
Like, well, how can you justify that?
Let's unravel the fabric of society.
Yeah.
You know, let's...
Somebody made a sarcastic comment about like how cars kill more people than guns do. So
and cars are regulated. up to the seat.
another person I'm close to responded like that, said like, "Oh yeah, good idea." So sarcastically told that person, "Good idea. We should regulate guns like cars."
Right.
Meaning the gun requires yearly inspections, registration, insurance,
Yep.
ongoing maintenance. You have to pass an initial test of competence,
Yep.
both written and practical.
Yep.
You have to renew your right to operate your gun every so many years.
Exactly.
Failure to adhere to laws or regulations can cause loss of license,
Yeah.
confiscation of weapons.
Exactly.
Like,
That's
it all
the
makes
most
sense. And then the
common
argument
sense
I always hear coming back is, well, the bad guys still get guns. Bad guys will still get guns.
Well, bad guys can still
Well,
drive a car
fuck.
into a building, too.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. I mean, why do we? I mean, Jesus Christ.
Who are these bad guys? What's a bad guy? I hate when they frame it like that, where it's like they see the world and
mustache twirling villain.
It's obviously a cartoon view of everything.
So many of these people who have committed these shootings and stuff would not be they don't wear like a bad guy name tag.
Yeah,
you know,
walk in a mask and an all black suit or something.
That's right. With like a hairless cat on their shoulder. You know, like that's not. You can't. It's just not like, well, bad guys will still get them. Well, good God, it's so much more complicated than that. Just black and white, good and bad.
Right.
And then that's. I mean,
you're never gonna stop any bad guy in a certain situation from doing something horrible.
You can just try to minimize how often or how easy it is for that to happen.
Exactly.
Or how traceable. Somebody has got to acquire weapons and ammunition through shady backroom dealings and black market. It might be slightly more traceable than a guy who got his gun legally.
Yeah.
So we say he check. Okay, he's got it, and then you forget about him because he passed your little test.
Exactly. Well, part of the
your little background check
method that the bad guys are using to get their guns are these ridiculous like gun shows or private sales or all these things that are like off the radar that aren't regulated. Like you could just go and this guy could sell you this gun and that's that.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't you want those things to be more regulated? To make any avenue that a bad guy could use to acquire a weapon, why wouldn't you want to make that harder?
And I don't understand that mentality either. A current gun owner should want gun regulation because they should want to be proud of the fact that they are a gun owner who did it in the way that is required that they do it.
Right.
Like I've passed all my registration and permits, and I'm mimicking holding a gun right now for those who can't see. I have my weapon here, and I did it the right way because I'm responsible and I'm what a gun owner should be.
Yeah.
And I don't want any crazies giving me a bad name.
That's exactly.
I don't want those people having a gun. You shouldn't want everybody to have a gun because they make you look bad.
Right.
Idiot.
In my non-cooking life, I dabble in photography, and there are a lot of, and I work with models and naked girls from time to time, and there are in the last few years it's been happening forever, but in the last few years especially, there have been a lot of focus on the fact that there are photographers who are sort of known in that world or industry for being inappropriate with models or being aggressive or even sometimes going to the level of sexual assault. And I sure as fuck want everything in place possible to separate the bad photographers from the good, so that I am not lumped in with people who are behaving that way.
Yeah. It goes that way with like all sort of communities,
right?
Like or team, like in pro sports when somebody commits a crime or something, the team will be like, well, he's our teammate and we're going to stand behind him.
Right.
Well, why? He makes you look bad if we know he did something. And the same, I could really be opening a bag of worms with the police thing.
Right.
But like if a policeman does something that's clearly beyond the pale.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm not going to mention any particular situations because everybody has stories about what happened, what went down in certain situations. But if a police officer does something that's not right, it shouldn't just be the public or the crazy left-wingers, us, saying that's terrible, police shouldn't do that. The police should be saying, that's terrible, and I want him gone because I'm a cop too, and he makes me look bad.
Exactly.
I have police relatives.
Well, not only that, but the police have their own regulations that are, that they have to follow. Like, it's not like the people on the outside of the police force are determining what's acceptable or what's not. They have their own rules.
Yeah, they have the rules. But even then, like, they close ranks,
Oh, absolutely. That's
every police officer on social media is always like, well, you pick on the cops until you need one.
But, yeah.
It's like, when I need a cop, I want a good cop to come help me.
Right.
But I still want the asshole cop not to have a job as a cop.
Exactly.
And you should want that, too, because he could make you look bad.
Mm-hmm.
Like, all this bad press comes from a few police,
right?
who are doing these things. But if all the police were not doing these things, saying, that's right, yeah, you're right, that guy, he did the wrong thing. I don't like what he did, I don't want him doing it, and I don't want that to happen again. I want him out. Then you are setting yourself up as an ally of the people who are...
Yeah.
So, to me, it just doesn't make any sense to close ranks, and it's all part of the brotherhood.
And to open up an even bigger can of worms, that in a nutshell is why I don't vote.
Maybe we should end it on that.
Case closed, Your Honor.